What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and today I'm going to take you through another comprehensive preview for all the NBA player props that are available on this upcoming slate. I'm going to be sharing my screen. I'm going to take you through outlier.bet to sort through all the data. I'll let you know who's got a bad matchup, who's got a great matchup. We'll go through their props, we'll go through their form to give you all the information that you need to make the best decisions possible for all your upcoming bets. If you are interested in taking your research to the next level, jump into outline.bet. I've got a link for it in the description box below. It will give you a 7-day trial. This analysis worked for me today. Went 3 for 3 in my single player picks. Banchero over in assists. John Collins over in rebounds. Jokic over in rebounds. We cashed on 2 same game parlays at plus money. Let's go. We're kicking it off with the Atlanta Hawks versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, DeJounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, their game time decisions. Clint Capella is still out. Buddy Hield, Cameron Payne just traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. They're both game time decisions as well. And for Philly, obviously, Joel Embiid is still missing in action, but we still have some plays to go through. Let's start off with Jalen Johnson. Now, his points line, over 15.5. You can get this for minus 104, so very close to plus money. And you can see he's hit this line in 8 of his last 10 games. He's hit this in 65% of his last 20 games. So his recent form is excellent. Looking at head-to-head matchups against the Philadelphia 76ers, he's played them twice this season, scoring 18 and 25 points. So he's been very productive against the Philadelphia 76ers this year. His last 10 games, they've been very good. He's been hitting at a very consistent basis. And looking at his matchup, so the 76ers allow the 14th most points in the league to power forwards. Difficult matchup. They only allow the 10th most points, 23 points per game. But we can see he's had some fairly difficult oppositions. The Boston Celtics, Los Angeles Clippers, Phoenix Suns, Los Angeles Lakers. They're all tough for power forwards. He's had some easy matchups, though. The Raptors, Dallas Mavericks, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Golden State Warriors. Cleveland's a difficult matchup. So he's had a mixed bag in his last 10 games. But basically what this tells me, doesn't matter what the matchup is, Jalen Johnson can still get busy. Looking at his level of activity, he's playing 37 minutes a night. He's taking 15.7 shots per game. So you basically need him to score 1 point for every shot that he takes, and he can cover this line. I do like it. The games that he's gone under were against the Clippers and against the Kings. Against the Clippers, he shot 3 for 14, 21% from the field. And against the Sacramento Kings, he shot 4 from 18. So even in the games where he's gone under, the activity has been there. He's shooting at an average of 46%. So if he takes the average number of shots that he does take, threes, free throws, field goals, if he's shooting 46% tonight, he's going to cover this line. So I don't mind this at all. The matchup may be difficult if you're looking at how things are on the season, but Joel Embiid's not there anymore. And Philadelphia, not the same defensive team without him. So I don't mind that. Looking at his assists, he has been getting busy. The line's at over 3.5. He's hit this in 7 of his last 10 games. Against the 76ers this year, 2 assists and 7 assists in his most recent matchup. Looking at assists, they're ranked 12th in terms of assists allowed. So again, not the best matchup for him. Overall, the Sixers are ranked 14th. So yeah, look, the matchup is not the best. I'll tell you that. But it's not the hardest matchup either. No Joel Embiid. The Hawks can put up some points. Don't mind his assist prop as well. So if you're looking at the last 10, you could easily bump this down to 3 if you're looking at parlays, and he's hit that in 9 of his last 10. But at over 3.5 at minus 119, yeah, it's not too bad at all. Checking out his rebound prop, his line's at 9.5 though. He's only hit that in 4 of his last 10 games. The matchup is good though. As you can see there, 24th, meaning the Philadelphia 76ers allow the 7th most rebounds per game to power forwards on the season. Looking at his head-to-head matchups, he's rebounded very well against Philly, 10 and 16. Given that we're seeing great form in his points and his assists, we're seeing a good rebound matchup. We're seeing him rebound well against the Sixers in the past. Last 10 on the rebounds are a little bit scratchy, but you might want to look at a PRA for Jalen Johnson. Let's have a look at his PRA. His line's at 29.5. 2 games against Philly this year, he's had 30 and 48 PRA. In his last 10 games, he's covered this PRA line in 7 of his last 10. And we can see the points allowed, rebounds allowed, and assists allowed right here. Rebounds, he has the best matchup, but that's where his form is the most patchy. Points and assists, he's been covering quite well, but the matchup is a little bit more difficult. But no Joel Embiid, man, why not? Jalen Johnson, he's going to go over something. I don't know what it's going to be. I still need to investigate that a little bit further, but I don't mind Jalen Johnson for this one. Let's have a look at DeJounte Murray. He is a game time decision, but if he does play, it'd be good to be equipped with everything that you need. Points wise, his line's at 21.5, which he's covered in 8 of his last 10. He has slightly gone under in his last 2. So I don't know, to play it safe, do you want to buy back a couple of points just to play a little bit safe in his points line? I'm not too sure. Looking at Philly, they're pretty much middle of the league in terms of points allowed to shooting guards on the season. So matchups neither good nor bad. Head-to-head matchups against Philly, 3 games against them this season, 13, 20, and then 25 points. The last time he went over was a home game. This is a road game. The last road game against Philly, he did score 20. So there's nothing screaming out to me here that tells me it's going to happen. I think the line is just about right. I think there's a good chance of an over or an under. So I'm not leaning either way for this one. Quickly looking at his assists, though, we can see here that the Philadelphia 76ers allow the 8th most assists to shooting guards in the league. In his last 10 games, he's covered this in 7 of his last 10. The lowest output he's had, though, is 5 assists, and his line's at 5.5. So I don't mind his assist prop here for DeJounte Murray. Some places you can get this at 4.5 because you're getting 5.5 at plus money. Head-to-head matchups against Philly. Against him this season, he's had 3, 9, and then 5 assists. So, a little bit up and down there if you're looking at DeJounte Murray assists. Looking at his rebounds, though, we can see he's covered in 8 of his last 10. His line's at 4.5. It is at minus 130. But 8 of his last 10, he's covered this line. The 76ers allow the 7th fewest rebounds to shooting guards, though. So the matchup could be seen as difficult. In head-to-head matchups, 1, 4, and then 5 rebounds. So his form is probably best on the rebound side of things. But look, his form's pretty good everywhere. Don't get me wrong. But matchup a little bit difficult for rebounds. Has a better matchup for other areas like his assists. So yeah, look, it's not too bad, DeJounte Murray. If we're looking at a PRA for him, given that we're seeing some healthy numbers across the board, we can see he's covered his PRA in 2 out of the 3 games against Philadelphia this year. In his last 10 games, he's covered his PRA in 9 of his last 10. So PRA may be the better option there for DeJounte Murray. We're taking a look at Trae Young. Firstly, looking at his points line. His line set at 25.5 at the moment. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10 games. He's hit this in 54% of his games on the season. He has gone under in his last 2. And it's not because he hasn't been shooting the ball. He's just been shooting the ball terribly. You can see that his minutes are good. He's averaging 18.9 field goal attempts. Last game against Boston, he shot 8 from 25, only 32% from the field. His worst shooting performance in his last 10 games. Head-to-head matchups against Philly, he's got 22 and 28 points in his last 2 games. These 2 games were this season. So you can pretty much maybe lock him in for 20. You probably get very low odds for it, but if you're looking for something safe for parlays, it might be the play. In terms of positional rankings, the 76ers allow the 4th fewest points to point guards on the season. So matchups difficult. You might want to take the under, but look, Trae Young's going to put up a lot of shots. All it takes is a couple of threes to sink in, and you're under his toast. So me personally, I'm not going to be playing his points line at all. Let's have a look at his assists. His line's at 10.5 assists. He's covered this in 7 of his last 10, 57% of the games this season. In terms of the matchup, they allow the 11th fewest assists, so leaning on the side of being more difficult. In terms of head-to-head matchups, he's killed this very, very well against Philly. The 2 games he's played against them this season, 13 and 11 assists, so he's got it done against them recently this year. I don't mind his assists in this one, despite the matchup being a little bit more difficult. I'd definitely be leaning his assists over his points, that's for sure. Let's have a very quick look at Saddiq Bey. Sometimes his points and rebound form is very consistent, so I just wanted to check that out. Firstly, looking at his rebounds, he's covered this line of 6.5 rebounds, which is plus money at the moment, in 7 of his last 10. The 76ers allow the 9th most rebounds to small forwards. in his head-to-head matchups against them this year. He's covered this line in all 3 games. So, and that's what I was talking about. So these types of role plays can be sneaky good if you're looking at their lines. So he's got a 70% hit rate. He's covered at 100% against the 76ers this year, and he's got a great positional rank matchup against them. I think all you really need to check is his minutes. His minutes are pretty decent. Played 35 against Boston, so he's getting there. And here's a nice little insight from Outlier. Sadiq Bey has exceeded 6.5 rebounds in 12 of his last 15 games on the road, where he's averaging 7.8 rebounds per game. So that's a nice little stat. Let's just have a look at that real quick. Just filter this by his away games only. And there you see it. There's his last 20 road games. He's hit this in 14 of his last 20 road games at a 70% hit rate. Looking at his last 10, that goes up to 80%. So 8 out of his last 10 road games, Sadiq Bey has covered his rebound line. He's got a good matchup, and he's done it against Philadelphia before. I don't mind that. Sadiq Bey, let's have a quick look at his points. Points-wise, he's hit this in 6 of his last 10 head-to-head matchups. He's good for 15, I'll tell you that. Last 2 games, or last 3 games, these 3 games of this season, he scored 17, 16, and 15 points. He did that with an average of 14 shots attempted per game. But field goal percentage real low in his last 2. You probably need to check the box score in these 2 games to see maybe they were missing more players. That's why he took more shots. But for this exercise, I'll probably be leaning more towards Sadiq Bey rebounds. I don't mind that prop at all. Let's have a look at Tobias Harris. We'll check out his points prop first. His line is at 22.5. He's covered this in 3 of his last 10. In terms of matchups, Tobias Harris. Let me just double check to see whether he's playing the 3 or 4 to start this game. He's playing the 4. So against power forwards, we can see here the Atlanta Hawks allow the most points to power forwards. So great matchup for Tobias Harris when it comes to points. He hasn't got it done. Dallas, I think they allow the second most points to power forward. So I think they got blown out in that game, though. Checking head-to-head matchups for Tobias, he's done well against Atlanta before. 29, 13, and then 32 points against the Atlanta Hawks this season. I'd be interested to know if Joel Embiid was playing in these. So let's filter by games with and without Joel Embiid. So he played 1 game without Joel Embiid against the Atlanta Hawks this season, and he scored 32 points. He played 41 minutes, and he attempted 24 shots in that game. So that's nice to know. His last 10 games without Joel Embiid, he's covered this line in 4 of his last 10. He's averaging 17.9 shot attempts per game. So, yeah, this is the game against Atlanta. He actually got hot, backed it up against Sacramento. But we know he's going to get some opportunities. It just really comes down to, will they keep the game close? And I think the spread's only like 4 points in this game. So the sports books are thinking this game's going to be close. He should get a lot of opportunities, a lot of minutes, take a lot of shots. So I don't mind this. The matchup is good. His recent form is not reliable, but you've got to be situational sometimes. I don't like that. I don't mind that for Tobias Harris. So rebound-wise, the Atlanta Hawks are the second most rebounds to power forwards. His line's at 6.5. He's only covered this in 2 of his last 10. Quick filtering without Joel Embiid. So without Joel Embiid, he's covered this in 6 of his last 10 games. He had 10 rebounds in that last game against Atlanta with no Joel Embiid in the lineup. I don't mind this rebound prop. I think on the point side of things, I'm a little bit cautious. And the reason being is, especially if Buddy Hield plays, does that take some shots away from him? Probably shouldn't, but Cam Payne is a point guard off the bench. That probably won't have too many impacts, but, I take that back. Tobias Harris, points and rebounds. I think he's either going to smash them both or he's going to go under them both. Like, he'll be very non-existent, but that's going to require a bit more research, I think. Tyrese Maxey. Let's have a look at Tyrese Maxey. Looking at his assist prop firstly. So the Atlanta Hawks allow the 3rd most assists in the league. To point guards, very much the same. Ranked 28th out of 30 teams. So they are the 3rd most assists. Tyrese Maxey's recent form is awful. Last 5 games, he's gone under this line in every single one of them. So that's not a good sign for us. He's covered this in 3 of his last 10. Head-to-head matchups against Atlanta. Has got the assists, though. 8, 7, and 9 assists his last 3 games against the Atlanta Hawks this season. Quick filter to see the Joel Embiid impact here. So he had 9 assists in that last game. Joel Embiid didn't play. Last 10 games without Joel Embiid. Well, Joel Embiid's been out this more recent form, hasn't he? So, yeah, look, he's really struggled. 2 of his last 10 games, he's gone under this assist prop without Joel Embiid. But one of those games where he went over was against the Atlanta Hawks. So that doesn't give me too much confidence, but the matchup is good. Points-wise, in his last 10, he's only covered this twice. He's been quite disappointing. Head-to-head matchups, 19, 30, and 35 points. I think this 30-point game was the one without Embiid. Let me just double-check that. 35. So the 35-point game was without Joel Embiid in the lineup. The last 10 games without Joel Embiid, 3 of his last 10 he's gone over, but one of them just happens to be Atlanta. So, yeah, look, the matchup is good. Atlanta allow a lot of points to point guards as well, but I think either Maxi blitzes this line and we see something crazy like this, 35 to 40 points, or he doesn't hit it at all. So if I was going to make a play on Tyrese Maxey, it would be for him to have a huge game. I'm talking 35 to 40 points, but not willing to risk it just yet. Then the last play to look at, just to see if there's any value in, is Onyeka Okongwu. So we know Clint Capella is out. Okongwu is starting. So the first thing I'm going to do is filter his games without Clint Capella. So no Capella in the lineup. Looking at his rebounds, his line's at 8.5. He's covered this in 7 of his last 10 games, which is pretty good. Looking at the rankings, they're mid-tier at the moment in rebounds allowed to centers, the Philadelphia 76ers. No Joel Embiid, so they've got Paul Reed starting at center. I don't mind this for Onyeka Okongwu. Played 1 game against Philly this year with Clint Capella out of the lineup, and he pulled down 11 rebounds. If we remove that filter for Clint Capella, we can see in just those games against Philly, 5, 8, and 11 rebounds. If we look at his minutes, though, played 35 minutes without Clint Capella, only played 18 to 19 minutes in the 2 game where Clint was there. So with the extra 10 to 15 minutes that he was playing, he was able to cover this line. It was a high-scoring game too, 132 to 139. Those high-scoring games mean there's not many rebounds available. So it'd be a good idea to check the box score in this game to see what percentage of rebounds did Onyeka Okongwu pull down. Because 11 rebounds in a high-scoring game like that might be a good shout. Having a look at how he gets it done, he's an offensive rebounding beast. Look at that. In that game, 6 offensive rebounds, only 5 defensive. Looking at his last 10, let's see what the hell's going on here. I want to see. So, in his last 10 games, if we just look at minutes, he's played 30. I think these are his starter minutes there. 3 games as a starter, I would assume. Let me just check the Capella thing again. Clint Capella. Okay. Last 2 games. I think Clint Capella might have got injured in the third. So, up against the Clippers, he played a lot of minutes. But look at that, 149 to 144. Again, it's difficult to get rebounds when a game's that high scoring. I don't see this game being that high scoring. Philadelphia's offense has slowed down without Joel Embiid a lot, and so has their defense. So, yeah, when he's starting, when he's playing more than 30-plus minutes, he's really covering this line quite well. So I don't mind this. Onyeka Okongwu, looking at his rebounds, quick look at his points. He's covered this in 4 straight games, believe it or not. Clint Capella's been out for 3 games. He got injured in this game against Phoenix. So Onyeka Okongwu scoring quite well. Against Philly, scored 19 points in that game. So what this tells me, Onyeka Okongwu points and rebounds might be the way to go because he can get active, he can get both of them. Trae Young's got to lob the ball to somebody, so I don't mind that. Points and rebounds for Okongwu. Let's just check it, what that line is. 20.5. You're looking at 20.5 points and rebounds. He's covered that in 4 straight games. Last game against Philly, Clint Capella wasn't there, and he had 30 points and rebounds. 19 points and 11 boards. So how can we see him getting this done? Probably 10 points, 10 rebounds. Look, he's usually in his limited minutes, he's good for about 8 to 10 points. It's just the rebound number is very dependent on his minutes. So if he's going to play 35 minutes, I like his chances to get rebounds here. So yeah, if he does have a poor rebounding game like he did against the Clippers, because it's high scoring, he's probably going to score a lot more points. So I think this is the best way to play it. Onyeka Okongwu over 20.5 points and rebounds. I don't mind that. Good matchup for points. Average matchup for rebounds. Let's take it. Onyeka Okongwu. Next up, we're jumping into the Houston Rockets versus the Toronto Raptors. Fred VanVleet is still out. There's a few players that are game time decisions for the Raptors, most notably Kelly Olynyk, so the new addition to the team. But for the most part, they'll be starting the way you expect them to. Let's start with Alperen Sengun. Let's check out this big man's points lines real quick. So starting with the points, up against the Raptors, what I understand, Jakob Poeltl is in, so that shores them up a little bit. But on the season, they're giving up the sixth most points per game to centers. So it's an easy matchup here for Alperen Sengun. Line's at 24.5, though. Does appear to be quite high. He's covered this in 3 of his last 10 games. Head-to-head matchups, he's gone under this line in 3 consecutive games against the Toronto Raptors. So good matchup, but he hasn't done it before, and his recent form's a little bit patchy. So points-wise, I probably wouldn't be leaning to that based off that. Assist-wise, it's got a pretty good matchup. 9th most assists allowed to centers. He's covered this in 7 of his last 10 games. In his last 3 games against the Raptors, he's covered this once. But that's probably the most important game because that was earlier this year. The Rockets beat them by 29 points, and he had 8 assists in that game. So, it's not bad, but what are the chances of replicating that? Because sometimes they go up and down, right? Which you can see here. Let's have a quick look at this. Minnesota Timberwolves. It's a difficult matchup defensively for everybody else, but it's a great matchup for assists to centers, and he only had 1 assist. Pelicans is a difficult matchup, and the Brooklyn Nets. That's an average matchup, so no real excuse for him there. No Fred VanVleet. Let's just check out how he goes without Freddie in the court. No Fred. He's covered this line in 5 of his last 10 games without Fred VanVleet. Covered in his last 2 without him. No head-to-head matchups without Fred in the lineup. So, I'm not too sold on that one either, to be honest. Let's have a look at his rebound prop. Line's at 10.5. You can get that for plus money, or you can take it down to 9.5. If you want to be a little bit safer. Because if you go down to 9.5, he's covered this in 9 of his last 10 games. In terms of matchup, the Raptors allow the 9th most rebounds to centers. So he could get that done. In head-to-head matchups, he had 13 in his last matchup against them, and he's gone under in the 2 matchups last season. So if you're basing it off just his form this year, definitely rebounds and assists, probably the way to go. But if you're looking at his last 10, he's a little bit inconsistent, but let's check rebounds and assists. So his line's at 15.5 for rebounds and assists. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10. Last matchup against the Raptors, he had 21 rebounds and assists. So he did clear that quite easy. The line for this game is it's -2, and the Raptors are favorite. So in this particular game, they blew the Raptors out by 29 points. So I definitely don't see that happening again, which means the Raptors are better offensively. There might be less rebounds available for Sengun, and assists as well. So, yeah, not a big fan of Sengun in this one, but you may find some interest there. RJ Barrett. Let's check out RJ for a minute. Now, he's playing much better as a Toronto Raptor. Don't mind him at all, fulfilling some potential perhaps. His line's at 21.5. These lines you wouldn't see when he was a New York Knickerbocker, but he's covered this line in 7 of his last 10 games. He's covered in 4 straight, which is very good. In terms of matchup, RJ Barrett, I think he's playing the 3 in this one. Let me double check that real quick. Yep, because Gary Trent Jr. is starting. Looks like a difficult matchup here. The Houston Rockets, they allow the 4th fewest points to small forwards. So it comes down to Dillon Brooks. If he's matched up with Dillon Brooks, might be a difficult one. So for scenarios like this, I'd usually jump on a stats muse and then check out RJ Barrett's game log against Dillon Brooks. I actually can do that right now while I'm talking to you. Against Dillon Brooks to see, the matchup is going to be difficult. How's he gone? Right. So I've just checked it out. Last 3 games, RJ Barrett against Dillon Brooks. 22 points, 15 points, and 20 points. He shot for over 50% in 2 of those games. So I wouldn't be too worried about Dillon Brooks. But look, it's a difficult matchup nonetheless. But if you're looking at parlays, perhaps, you want to have a look at his shot attempts. Taking at least 15 shots per game, which is pretty good. Averaging 15.7. He's shooting at 53% from the field. Look at this stat. RJ Barrett has exceeded 21.5 points in 4 of his last 5 home games. So he's averaging 23.6 points at home. I don't mind that at all. You might want to take his over. I'd feel confident in taking him for 15 for a same game parlay in this one, so I don't mind that for RJ Barrett. Let's have a look at his rebound line. His line's at 5.5. He's covered this in 8 of his last 10 games, which is crazy. He's covered this in 75% of his last 20 games, which is unbelievable. Check this out. He's hit 4 plus rebounds in 20 straight games. He's covered his line of 5.5 rebounds in 15 of his last 20 games. In terms of matchups, the Houston Rockets allow the 8th fewest rebounds to small forwards, but matchup aside, RJ Barrett, he's probably faced a more difficult matchup through this span, and he's probably done well. Let's have a look at that. He's had a game against the Bulls. I know that's a difficult matchup. Clippers, that's a difficult matchup. Sacramento, he should have got more rebounds in that one. OKC, high scoring game. OKC give up a lot of boards to bigs, actually. And the Brooklyn Nets, they actually give up a lot of boards to wings. So, but look, RJ Barrett for 4 rebounds, that's pretty arousing to me. Taking over his 5.5. Statistically, look, he's hitting at 75% in his last 20 games. The odds indicate he probably has a 55% chance of hitting it. So, there's probably a positive EV play if you guys are into that type of stuff, but I don't mind that. RJ Barrett, looking pretty good, my man. Let's have a look at Jalen Green. Firstly, quick look at his assists. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10. His line is at 3.5. The matchup, the Toronto Raptors, they're in the middle. They allow the 15th most assists. Head-to-head matchups, 1 from 2, so nothing crazy there. Let's jump into points. So head-to-head matchups in points, he scored 21. He scored 21 and 14. 14 points in that last matchup where they lost by 29 points to Houston. In that game, he only played 27 minutes. He shot 7 for 14. So he didn't shoot too bad, just didn't get the minutes, really. If that game was a bit more competitive, like we expect it to be, probably would have scored a lot more points. Looking at his last 10 games, we can see 5 of his last 10. Scored 30 in his last matchup against the Pacers. Has a good matchup. The Raptors allow the 9th most points to shooting guards. So I don't mind this for Jalen Green. The matchup is good, provided they don't get blown out and he plays more than 27 minutes. I can definitely see him getting very close to this line, if not hitting it. So, yeah, definitely want to consider there. Jalen Green over in his points. Let's look at the points for Gary Trent Jr. in this one. Recently promoted to the starting lineup. Have a look at matchup and all that. So the Rockets allow the 12th fewest points to shooting guards. Gary Trent Jr., he's covered this in 6 of his last 10 games. I just want to check his minutes. Only played 14 and a half, 15 minutes against the Pelicans. So all the other games looking at about 25 minutes. Taking a decent number of shots, but nothing screaming out to me there. Head-to-head matchups, he scored 12 points in that loss against the Rockets last time, which it's not too bad at all. That's not too bad. Gary Trent Jr. could get it done. Probably has the easier matchup. Most players you'll find for the Raptors have what's called a difficult matchup against the Rockets. So don't mind Gary Trent Jr. for maybe at least 10. Let's have a look at Jakob Poeltl up against centers. So firstly, let's look at rebounds. So the Houston Rockets, they do allow the 14th most rebounds to centers, which is pretty much middle of the league. In his last 10, he's covered this in 6 of those games. Matchups against the Houston Rockets, he pulled down 5 rebounds in a loss. So that was always going to be difficult for him. Points-wise, let's have a look at his points. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10 games. He's got another mid-tier matchup. Rockets ranking 15th in points allowed to centers. And he only scored 6 points in that blowout loss to the Houston Rockets. So nothing screaming out to me there for Jakob Poeltl. He has been a good bet recently, but the matchup isn't great enough, and he's been back in the lineup for long enough for the lines to really adjust. So Scotty Barnes. Let's have a look at Scotty Barnes. We'll check his points, rebounds, and assists. Kicking it off with his points. His line's at 20.5. He's gone under this in 3 straight games. He's covered in 5 of his last 10. In terms of matchups, pretty good matchup if anyone's going to have one against the Rockets, who allow the 8th most points to power forwards on the season. So if there is a weak link, it's probably in that position. Head-to-head matchup, Scotty Barnes. So despite them losing by 29 points, he still scored 28 points himself. He shot the ball 17 times, made 10 shots. So he has got it done against the Rockets. That's good. The matchup is good, but recent form, it's a bit how you're going. Look, 15, definitely probably a lock for your same game parlays, perhaps, but he's got the good matchup. He just hasn't been doing it lately. So I wonder if that's due to, yeah, he's only attempting 15, 12, and 14 shots, plus he's shooting less than 50%. So, yeah, tricky one there for Scotty Barnes. Let's check his assists. His line's at 6.5, which is quite high. My God. The Rockets allow the 11th most assists to power forwards. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10 games. And in his last 3 games against the Rockets, he's gone under in all 3. So I don't know why this line's at 6.5. Yeah, he's definitely capable of getting a lot more, but the matchup isn't the easiest one in the world. Well, it's easier, but it's not screaming out to me that this should be a lot higher than his average. So yeah, I don't like the assists. I'm leaning to the under on that one. Rebound wise, his line for rebounds is also at 6.5. So you can see he's hit this in 4 of his last 10. The Rockets allow the 4th most rebounds to power forward, so he's got a good matchup there. Got 7 rebounds in his last rebound against the Rockets, 6 and 8 prior to that. But I've hated Scotty Barnes' rebound props over the last couple of weeks because he's a lot of the time he's burning you. Given his size, the position he plays, his importance to this team, and a lot of the matchups he's had, he hasn't got it done. A great reference is here: Atlanta and the Chicago Bulls. I think they're 1 and 2 in terms of rebounds allowed to power forwards, and he only got 4 rebounds in both of those games. So he does shit like that, which makes me think I'm not going to bet his rebound prop. He's got another easy matchup tonight against the Rockets, but yeah, look, not a fan of that. Look, Scotty Barnes, 15 points, probably the only thing I'd consider for him. Last player to look at would be Emmanuel Quickly. Let's check out Emmanuel Quickly real quick. See what I did there. Points-wise, his line's at 18.5. He's only covered this in 2 of his last 10 games. Against point guards, Houston allows the 4th fewest points to point guards. So he's going to have a difficult matchup there. Head-to-head, he scored 25 points in that loss to the Houston Rockets when they met earlier this year. So that could be a danger sign. But if anything, that really just makes me think he'll go under anyway. That game was only 4 games ago. He's gone under 3 games straight since. So yeah, I would still lean the under for Emmanuel Quickly. But again, I'm not a big fan of taking unders right now. Let's have a look at his assists. Assist to point guards, 2nd fewest assists to point guards. He had 6 assists in that last game against Houston. He's hit this in 4 out of his last 10. Now, the game is projected to be a lot closer. Does that mean more minutes, more opportunities, more assist chances potentially for Emmanuel Quickly? Possibly. But yeah, all the value for Emmanuel Quickly is gone, so I wouldn't be betting on him at all, to be honest. But just wanted to give you guys the information. You might enjoy it. You might need it. Jumping into the Washington Wizards versus the Boston Celtics. Now, Rashawn Holmes, he got traded to Washington for Daniel Gafford. He's a game-time decision. Jason Tatum, he's a game-time decision in this one too. Springer's a game-time decision, as well as Xavier Tillman. But pretty much the Wizards, they traded away Gafford, who was their starting center, leading rebounder. They already had Bagley. They traded for him earlier this year, but he's out. He's injured. That really leaves them thin in the front court. So potential here for maybe a Porzingis strong game. But let's jump through. Let's get through all these players and see what's going on. Starting off with Kyle Kuzma. So checking his points prop first. His line's at 21.5. He's covered this in 4 of his last 10 games. Looking at power forwards, the Boston Celtics allow the 2nd fewest points to power forwards, so that means it should be a difficult matchup. In head-to-head matchups, he's gone under his points line in 2 straight games against the Boston Celtics, so that helps lean to the under. Looking at his assists, Kyle Kuzma, Outlier is saying that this is a positive EV play, so good value. He's hit this in 7 of his last 10. He has struggled in his last 3, but those are some of the hardest matchups you could get. Clippers, Miami, Cleveland, but then again, Boston Celtics, they get the 10th fewest points to assists to power forwards and the 5th fewest assists overall this season. So this matchup doesn't get any easier, but in saying that, he's shown that he can do it. Head-to-head matchups, he had 4 assists in that last matchup against Boston. So Yeah, I'm not comfortable playing that given the difficulty of the matchup, but it's only 4 assists, right? You could get those very quickly. Rebound wise, he's got this in. He had 8 and 5 rebounds last 2 games against Boston. They do allow the 12th most rebounds to power forwards. Looking at the last 10, he's only hit this in 3 of 10 games. So it's very difficult to bet on Kyle Kuzma. Wildly inconsistent, and it makes sense. You're playing for one of the worst teams in the league. It's going to be hard to put up consistent numbers. Let's take a look at Tyus Jones, matched up against Drew Holiday in this one. Points wise, I expected to see this. The Boston Celtics give it the 6th most points to point guards in the season. So Tyus Jones has covered this line in 7 of his last 10 games. In head-to-head matchups, he did score 11 points against Boston earlier this year. I think that was at the end. Looking at shot attempts, want to see some consistency, and he's averaging 11.4, but he ranges between 7 shot attempts and 16 shot attempts depending on the matchup. That last game against Boston, he took 9 shots. He went 5 for 9, 1 from 4 from downtown. Pretty decent shooting percentage. The matchup is good. His recent form is okay. I don't mind this, to be honest. 11.5, considering if he's gone even like all these games where he's going under, that just pulls his average down, right? It doesn't matter what the line was in this game, he's going to go under it. And it's very much the same if he was going to go over. So in terms of matchup, having a look through here, Phoenix is an easy matchup for point guards, easier. The Spurs, that's an easy matchup for point guards. The Pistons is an easy matchup for point guards too, and he's got another game against the Spurs. So 4 of the 7 games where he's gone over, you could say that they are easy matchups. This game against Boston is technically an easy matchup too. So I don't mind this for Tyus Jones. Maybe taking for 10 if you're looking at some parlays, but I don't hate this. Looking at his assist prop though, the line is at 7.5. He's covered this in 6 of his last 10 games. 2 games, he's covered it in a row. In terms of assists, the Boston Celtics, 11th fewest assists. So this matchup is a bit more difficult, but he is a bit more consistent in terms of form of hitting this line. I think the hardest matchup he had, this Cleveland one right here, that was meant to be a very difficult matchup for him because I remember doing a preview for that, and he still covered it anyway. Head-to-head matchups, had 7 assists against the Boston Celtics earlier this year. So I wouldn't say to take the over, but look, I don't mind him for 6 assists. He's shown whether the matchup's good or bad. He's going to get 6. Let me just quickly check the numbers if on over 5.5, and I can give it to you. So he's hit this in 85% of his last 20 games, which is pretty cool. Check that out. So he's probably hit this in 15 straight games, 6+ assists. Probably a good parlay play is all I'm saying. So Tyus Jones, 6 assists, 10 points. You can definitely get that done for us, I think. But look, just check the pin comment at the end. I'll put a pin comment probably 1 hour after the games are done. I mean, after the preview is done and this is uploaded, my final pick should be in there. So if you guys want to tell me, you can definitely do that. Looking at Jason Tatum. I don't like betting on Jason Tatum, and I'm about to show you why. Points lines at 27.5. He's covered this in 4 of his last 10. He's got lows of 18 and highs of 39. And this is the Jason Tatum experience going up and down all the time. The matchup is pretty good, though. The Wizards allow the 11th most points to power forwards on the season. Head-to-head matchups, he's gone 23, 28, and then 33 in their last matchup earlier this year. I'm not sold on it, and I won't be taking it. I just don't like betting on such a high line on a player like Jason Tatum. He takes a lot of bad shots. A lot of fadeaways are unnecessary. I think he can get to the rack whenever he wants to, but he's just got this love for the long ball at the moment. So checking out his rebounds, though, his line is at 9.5. The Wizards, it's a good matchup. 8th most rebounds to power forwards on the season, but he's only covered this in 3 of his last 10 games. Head-to-head matchups, he's gone under this in 3 straight games against the Washington Wizards. So even if you wanted to look at 6, because he hit 6 rebounds, 10 out of his last 10, given the line, you're going to get terrible odds for that anyway. So Jason Tatum, I am not a fan. Let's quickly check his assists, but I think we'll see much of the same shit. Look at this. His line's at 4.5. He's capable of 8 assist games and 1 assist games. The Washington Wizards, another 15th most assist to power forwards. So nothing screaming out to me there. And then in head-to-head matchups, 3, 5, and 3. So I welcome you to the Jason Tatum experience. And that's why I won't be betting on any Jason Tatum props. Who else is there? Jordan Poole. He just had an awful game, right? What was it? 0 for something? Shacked in a pool. Didn't score a point against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Looking at the matchup, it doesn't get much easier. The Boston Celtics, they give the second fewest points to shooting guards on the season. Jordan Poole's hit this line, though, in 5 of his last 10. He scored only 11 points in that last matchup against Boston, and he took 11 shots, and he made 5 of them. I just want to quickly check that last game against Cleveland. He was 0 for 5. Poor fella. And then the game prior to that, 1 from 7. So, and then prior to that against Miami, 6 from 21. So this man right now, I'm telling you, has zero confidence whatsoever. Here's an interesting stat. Jordan Poole has exceeded 14.5 points in 4 of his last 5 games on the road. So that's interesting. Having a look at his last 10, we can see these are 3 home games against the Spurs, Detroit, New York. So, but yeah, look, his recent form is awful. The matchup is difficult. I know it's on the road, but I don't see how that's going to help Jordan Poole in this one. So yeah, definitely leading the under on Jordan Poole points. So there's no lines available for Jaylen Brown or Kristaps Porzingis yet. Until Jason Tatum's status is decided, then you'll get the chance to bet on everybody else for the Boston Celtics. So for now, it's just the Wizards we have to look at. Some Tyus Jones. He's got some pretty good players. The rest, probably not a fan of. Jordan Poole under perhaps, but I'll leave that up to you. Let's jump into the Charlotte Hornets versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Caleb Martin, he's a game time decision for the Charlotte Hornets, but so is a lot of their new players: Seth Curry, Kyle Lowry, Bertans, Trey Mann. My lord, that's a lot of new players. And for the Bucks, Dame Lillard, Chris Middleton, they're game time decisions too. Pat Beverly, he's also a game time decision. So there's probably only a few players that I'm going to look at here. We're going to preview that one. Let's have a quick look at Nick Richards. If you're looking at Nick Richards, you'd normally just look at his rebound prop, but I know he's got a good matchup for points. But let's quickly check out his boards. Lines at 8.5. He's covered this in 6 of his last 10. In terms of rebounds, the Milwaukee Bucks give up the 9th most rebounds to center, so it's not a bad matchup for him. In head-to-heads, he struggled. Probably didn't get the minutes. Yep, 6 minutes, 2 minutes, 17. So he hasn't got the minutes to really look at head-to-head form there for Nick Richards. Points-wise, I know he has a good matchup too. The Bucks allow the 5th most points to centers, but he's been extremely unreliable. They're not going to run plays for him. And unless they get a true point guard out there, I don't see Nick Richards getting some points anyway. Who else is there? Miles Bridges. So he just had 2 back-to-back 40-point games, I believe. His lines, 41 and 45. His lines are 26.5. He's covered this in 4 of his last 10. In terms of power forwards, the Bucks allow the 7th fewest points to power forwards on the season. So difficult matchup for Bridges. But I'll make this one quick because I don't think you should bet on any Charlotte Hornet props right now anyway, because there's a lot of players who are game time decisions in this one. Hornets are clearly rebuilding, so whether they win or not, it's not very much important. I think they'll be fucking around. They'll be playing around with the rotations and lineups. Seth Curry could take 5 to 10 shots. Kyle Lowry won't, but Caleb Martin's capable of another 5 to 10 shots. Trey Mann, if he gets the minutes, he can put up some shots too. So, yeah, I wouldn't be touching Miles Bridges right now, but let's quickly have a look at his rebound prop because sometimes he can be terrible. What's crazy is he finished on 0 rebounds against the Lakers. He played like 40 minutes, got 8 rebounds against the Raptors. Rebound matchup, the Bucks allow the 5th fewest rebounds to power forwards. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10, and he had 5 rebounds in his last matchup against the Milwaukee Bucks. So, yeah, probably lean to the under on his boards, but again, I wouldn't bet on the Charlotte Hornets right now until you know who exactly is playing. Let's have a look at Dame Darla. Let's look at his points. His line's at 26.5. Charlotte Hornets defend point guards quite well. They allow the 8th fewest points. He's gone under this line in 7 of his last 10 games, only hitting it 3 times. Head-to-head matchup, scored 27 points in his last matchup against the Charlotte Hornets. But what did he do? He shot 18 times, made 9 shots, shot 50% from the field, 50% from deep, didn't miss a free throw. So you could say he was very efficient in that game. Looking at his last 10, had that one awesome game against Dallas, shot 91% from the field. But the majority of these games, he's shooting less than 50%. He's struggling. 3-pointers, he's only making them at 36% at the moment, 43% from the field, and he's averaging 18 shot attempts per game. So based on those numbers, yeah, I'd definitely be leaning to the under for Damian Lillard, but I don't know. The Bucks are awful right now, aren't they? Assists, his line's at 7.5. He's covered this in 4 of his last 10. The Hornets allow the 11th fewest assists to point guards. Head-to-head matchup, he only had 5 assists in the last game. It was a blowout, so he probably played less minutes. Let's take a look at Brandon Miller, though. Brandon Miller's been pretty good. I bet on him last time to make a lot of threes, and he did not, but the opportunities were definitely there. So despite only scoring 20 points against the Toronto Raptors, his line was 22.5 in that game. His line is now 25.5 in this game against the Milwaukee Bucks. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10 games. Head-to-head matchups, he scored 10 points in that last game against the Bucks. He played 27 minutes, took 12 shots, didn't make any threes. Brandon Miller's failed to exceed 25.5 points in 16 of his last 18 games on the road. So on the road, averaging 15 points per game over that stretch. I'm going to look at the matchup piece here. Yeah, look, he's got a pretty good matchup. The Milwaukee Bucks allow the 5th most points to shooting guards. So I don't mind that. He's definitely in a more prominent role. He's got the size advantage for Malik Beasley, that's for sure. I think you'll probably see some Chris Middleton action, but we don't know if Middleton's going to play. So Brandon Miller, I think good chance for him to get some points. As we saw earlier, difficult matchup for Miles Bridges. So Miles Bridges and Miller, they're key offensive threats. If a lot of these guys who are game time decisions aren't playing, then definitely Brandon Miller, a points prop is what I'd be looking at. I'd also consider a rebound prop because he can do okay there, but the line's at 4.5 and he doesn't hit that quite well. So, yeah, just the points prop there for Brandon Miller. Let's have a look at Giannis. His points prop at 33.5. He's hit this in 3 of his last 10 games. In his head-to-head matchups against the Hornets, 9, 34, and 16 points. In terms of the matchup, the Hornets have done a good job. They allow the 12th fewest points to power forwards on the season. So Giannis, I'm not saying he has a difficult matchup because everyone has an easy one. That's probably why they don't allow so many points to power forwards, because they'll leak points across the park. But looking at his rebounds real quick, his line's at 11.5. He's only hit this in 4 of his last 10, so not very convincing. 8 and 18 rebounds there. And then assist-wise, he's hit this in 5 of his last 10. That's 7.5, but he did have 9 assists in that last game. So, look, Giannis is an absolute freak, but what that means is his lines are going to be ridiculously high most of the time. So his current line for this game is 52.5. He's hit that in 32% of games this year, 40% of his last 20 games. So he definitely leans to the under more often than not. Head-to-head matchup, covered this in 1 of his last 3 games against the Charlotte Hornets. I can see him getting 8, 9. I can see a similar game like this where he scores about 25 points. And if he's scoring, that's only going to give him close to 45 PRAs. Like, for him to get this 52.5 PRA, we're talking about Giannis scoring 30 to 35 points and racking up the assists, racking up the rebounds. And I think if he's playing that good, this game's probably not that close. So, yeah, I'm definitely leaning an under in Giannis's PRA. He just had a very slow game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. But look, on a back-to-back, I wonder how he's going to perform. So we're jumping into the Denver Nuggets versus Sacramento Kings. Now, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is out for this one by the looks of it. Chris Duarte is still out for the Sacramento Kings as well, but everybody else is expected to play. So we're jumping through the key players in this one, and let's start with Nikola Jokic. Is on a back-to-back, though, so double-check his numbers, but the man's a beast. Points-wise, his line's at 27.5, so it's gone up. He's covered this line in 5 of his last 10 games. Against centers, it's a difficult matchup. The Kings allow the 6th fewest points to centers. Looking at his head-to-head matchup, Jokic just said, fuck that, I'm putting points on. Scored 40 and 36 in his last 2 games against the Kings. Only matchup this year was a 6-point win to Sacramento, and Jokic scored 36 points. So we possibly could see a lot more points for Jokic in this one. Looking at his assists, that line's at 8.5. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10 games, just had 9 assists against the Los Angeles Lakers today. The Sacramento Kings allow the 16th fewest assists per game. And looking at head-to-head matchups, we can see that he had 14 assists in his last game against the Kings. So he had 36 points and 14 assists in that game. Great statistical output. Let's check his rebounds. Surely he got more than 10 and nailed a triple-double. So he had 13 rebounds in that last game against the Kings. So 36, 13, and 14. That was his stat line. In terms of matchups, the Kings allow the 10th most rebounds to centers this season. In his last 10 games, he's hit this in 6 of his last 10. His line's at 12.5, but it's pretty close to even money at the moment, minus 105. So, yeah, I don't mind Nikola Jokic rebounds in this one, but I think if you want to get $2 odds, you can probably play something like 20 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. I think I ran something like that today. And you can get pretty close to $2 odds for that one, I think. So, yeah, Nikola Jokic, probably primed for another good game. Let's check out Domantas Sabonis. We'll start with his points prop. His line's at 19.5. The Denver Nuggets allow the 9th most points to centers on the season. He's covered this points line in 4 of his last 10 games. Head-to-head matchups, he's gone under in his last 2, though, 17 and 14 points. Last time he went over was in December of 2022. So the matchup is good, but recent form's a bit patchy, and his form against the opponent looks like it's been difficult for him. Looking at his rebounds, though, his line's at 13.5, so it's higher than Jokic's. And the Denver Nuggets allow the 6th fewest rebounds to centers on the season, so the matchup is difficult. The line is higher. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10, and he had 15 rebounds in that last matchup against Denver, though. So that's not a bad shout. Is there anything safe for a parlay we can look at? 10 rebounds he'll get, but you're not going to get great odds for that anyway. Let's check his assists. Could this be a game where the both of them get a triple-double? That's what I'd like to see. His line's at 8.5. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10. The Denver Nuggets allow the 10th fewest assists to centers on the season. And in head-to-head matchups, he's gone under in 3 straight. So life has been difficult for Domantas Sabonis against Nikola Jokic by the looks of it. What I might be considering is just an under in his PRA. His rebound line is hit before, but usually he goes under 13.5 points. So if you're looking at his PRA, it's 41.5. Last matchup against Denver, he had 7 assists, 15 rebounds, and 17 points. So he's still got 39, which is pretty close. And looking at his last 10, he's actually covered this in 6 of his last 10. So I'm a fool for him considering fading you, Domantas. So I shan't be doing that. Let's look at his running mate, De'Aaron Fox. He's been pretty average this year. Points-wise, his line's at 23.5, which is very low considering how well this guy played last year. Matchup-wise, the Denver Nuggets allow the 9th fewest points to point guards on the season. De'Aaron Fox has hit this in 5 of his last 10. In head-to-head matchups, he's done quite well. Scored 26 points in his last matchup against them. He's covered this in 3 of his last 4. When he scored that 26 points, he played 37 minutes. He attempted 22 shots. Now, looking at his last 10 games, we can see he's averaging 18.5 shot attempted, and 35.9 minutes. But he's shooting at 45% from the field, 28% from deep. And he's only shooting 61% from the line. De'Aaron Fox has failed to exceed 24.5 points in 6 straight games at home. He's only averaging 15 points per game at home. So the matchup we know is difficult. His form is a bit average at the moment. So, look, I don't mind taking the under here for De'Aaron Fox based on what I'm seeing. It might be a sweat, but I don't mind it at all. I don't care that he's played well against Denver in the past. The fact that his shooting percentage is down, just versing a certain team you play well against, I'm not going to change that, I don't believe. So I don't mind that. De'Aaron Fox, looking at his assist real quick for this one. The Nuggets allow the 8th fewest assists to point guards on the season. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10 games. And in head-to-head matchups, he had 16 assists. My Lord, 16 assists in that last game against the Denver Nuggets. And then 13 assists in this one here. So that's a pretty crazy output there for De'Aaron Fox. Very interesting. So I won't be playing the under in his assists, that's for sure. But if he is going to play well and pass the ball that often and get it in those dimes, it means he's not going to need to score a whole lot of points. Let's look at Jokic's mate, Jamal Murray. Had a good matchup and a great game against the Lakers today. Scored 29 points. He really closed that game out like a boss. Went on his own run in the last minute. His line's at 23.5. He's hit this in 4 of his last 10 games. In terms of matchups, the Sacramento Kings allow the 13th most points to point guards on the season. Head-to-head matchups, he scored 25 points in his last game against the Kings, but that was in December of 2022. I don't like Jamal Murray to go over in this purely because he doesn't tend to string high-scoring games back-to-back. Kind of saves that to the playoffs and the regular season. Someone else will step up. I do think it would be Jokic in this one for some reason, but let's check his assist numbers out. Line's at 7.5. He's gone over that in 3 straight games, 10, 10, and 11. That's pretty crazy. In terms of the matchup, the Sacramento Kings allow the 5th most assists to the point guard position this year. So the matchup is great. Recent form is pretty wild. Looking at his last 3 games, he had 7 assists in that game, but that was such a long time ago. What I would be doing here is I would be checking to see if Jamal Murray's potential assists in this 3 games are much different to the prior games that he's had, because could this just be improved shooting from certain players, or is he passing the ball more? Are they doing something differently? That's what I'd be willing to check. So, look, I don't like his points. I do like his assists. Do we run a parlay here of under in his points, over in his assists for Jamal Murray? Perhaps. I'll take a look at it after the video is done. Outside of that, there's no other real markets that I'd be interested looking in here. Keegan Murray, look, this is a home game for the Sacramento Kings, so let's just see his points line. Sometimes he tends to pop off. In terms of the matchup, pretty mid, 16th, and he's been pretty awful lately, hasn't he? But one thing you notice, a lot of these are away games. He struggles on the road. Home games, he is much better. Scored 0 points against the Pistons in his last game. Played 20 minutes and scored nothing. Okay. Well, that doesn't give me much confidence. Let's quickly just check home games only. Last 10 home games. Yeah, you can see that he is capable of doing some work when he's at home. His line's at 12.5. If I was going to bet it, it would be for something like 20 points. But, yeah, I don't know what's going on with him. His recent form's a bit too scary for me, so I'm not willing to take him to bounce back in this one. So, the New Orleans Pelicans versus Los Angeles Lakers. There's no markets really available at the moment. D'Lo's game time decision, LeBron, AD game time decisions. We've got, for the Pelicans, Valanciunas, Zion Williamson, their game time decisions as well. So, no markets available on that, but I will research that game when the lines do come out and they are available. In the interim, I just want to remind you all to check the pinned comments, because the pinned comments is where I put my final bets. We've had a pretty good streak over the last few days, but look, I'm not saying you should back my bets. What I'm saying is that's where they are. If you are interested in taking them, as always, I encourage you to do your own research, whether you're using outlier.bet and you're using the trial code that I give you, or if you're using another service, just do your own research, check them thoroughly. Don't submit that bet unless you've got 100% confidence in them. I'll catch you guys in the next one. I do appreciate it if you've made it this far. Bless up. May the gambling gods be with you. I'll see you guys in the next video tomorrow. Peace.
Up to the channel because your boy's getting busy. Coming to you live from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice and the daily. It's all free. You don't even have to pay me.